Hello and welcome everyone to the Gum Show, episode 2. I am your host, Ghost Gum, and today is going to be a bit more of a rant because I have some opinions that I want to be made heard, and it's about gambling. Now, I see gambling everywhere now. I see it everywhere. It's on Twitter, it's on YouTube. I know Twitch banned it, but Twitch is a whole different thing. And it's just, to me, it's getting out of control, man. It's getting crazy. I now, for a little bit of context, for everyone out there watching, I love sports. Sports are my favorite, maybe one of my favorite pastimes. I'll watch anything. UFC, I'd say, is probably my favorite right now, but it changes between UFC, NFL, NHL is definitely up there, baseball, MLB. But I find now it's getting so bad with these gambling companies constantly shoving things down your throat. Like every UFC fight, they're always like, this one better place these odds. What, if you had put this on that, you would have made this. And it drives me up the wall because it's real. It seems so predatory. Like, for an example, I watched the UFC about a month ago, UFC 293, which was Adesanya versus Strickland. And for anyone who knows UFC, it was like some of the most lopsided odds ever. So I believe it was, if you put $600 on Adesanya and he won, you'd make $100. So it was like crazy. Everyone thought Strickland was going to lose. It was like a complete, it was almost a guarantee for some people to make a little bit of money. So one guy, I believe, because they always show it, they're sponsored by DraftKings or whatever. So they show the before the fight, all the bets coming in, money's coming in from here. And this one guy put $230,000, something like that. It was 230 something thousand dollars on Adesanya to win. Lo and behold, there's a massive upset. Strickland ends up beating Adesanya and destroying him, by the way. It was completely one-sided. And now this guy's down. This guy just lost $230,000. I just don't understand how that's no one really acknowledges that. It's oh, it's all about the big wins. And I guess that's because these companies have so much money, right? They have so much money. I saw recently, gambling makes more money than music, movies, and TV all put together. That's how much money gambling makes. And it's just insane to think about how much money must be going through there because, I see it everywhere now. They're sponsoring every sport, and some of them are worse than others. I would say UFC is probably one of the worst. The NHL is so bad now. It's like every period of hockey you watch, it's like, hey, these are the odds right now. If you gambled this, it would make the game way more interesting, and you could have made this amount of money. And it's like, there's a channel I saw recently who I do watch occasionally, and I don't want to shit on them because they seem like really good guys, but MMA on Point, it's kind of like a content farm MMA channel. If you're wanting to get into MMA or UFC or whatever, I would say that's probably the best channel to go to. But they were talking about a fight that was, they were like, oh, if you had bet this amount of money, if you put $100 on Yair Rodriguez to win by submission in the second round, Yair Rodriguez being a kickboxer who doesn't usually submit people, you would have made this amount of money. If you predicted the fight exactly, you would have made $1,000 or something like that. And it's like, well, yeah, you could say that about anything. If I had invested a ton of money back in crypto back in 2013, I'd be a millionaire. But I didn't do that because I can't predict the future, So I guess they're kind of relying on that. And I don't want to shit on people like MMA on Point too much, or sports YouTubers who take DraftKings sponsorships or FanDuel sponsorships, because I know they're just trying to pay the bills. And I while I don't agree with it per se, I don't want to just come down on these people, because I have friends who are YouTubers who have taken those sponsorships, and I know typically with a sponsorship, at least how it works with my sponsorships, is I have someone vet them for me. So I have an agent who goes through them, vets them, makes sure they're all clean, and will, make sure it's not a fucking scam company. And I don't think betting is gambling companies are necessarily scams, but they kind of operate in the same way where it's the odds are always rigged against you. And I saw something recently that gambling websites also make the most money from whales. So they in their mind, if they advertise to a couple million people and they get, one or two whales from that, that's worth it for them, because those are the types of people to spend thousands of dollars on They'll put $5,000 on a wager, and no matter what, if you keep gambling, you're going to lose money. Like, that's the inevitability. And you see that with all these big Twitch streamers like XQC and Trainwrecks and Aiden Ross. Who am I forgetting? These guys move different countries because of gambling sponsors who pay them so much money. I don't even know the figures, but it's definitely in the double-digit millions, if not triple-digit millions, and sometimes, which is insane to me. And guys like Trainwrecks, I believe he moved to Canada to pursue a gambling sponsorship because the laws were more lax than the U.S. And I just watched a video about him, and he had won $12 million in one thing of slots, which to literally anyone on the planet, or like 99.9% of people, that is life-changing money. That is insane money. But, he still says, I'm still down. They give me money, but I use my own money and I'm still losing it, which to me is like so ridiculous. It's so insane. Like, how they must be paying ridiculous amounts of money. And you see people like FaZe Banks or Aiden Ross, they go to these random ass countries. Like, one of the big ones I've seen recently is Curacao, which ironically puts out a lot of good baseball players, but it's a tiny Caribbean island. If you look up Curacao on Google Images, it's probably like it's definitely smaller than like New York State. It's probably the size of Rhode Island. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. That could be completely wrong. But it's tiny, is my point. And the economy is so bad there that they will take anything to stimulate it. Which, of course, it's a small Caribbean island. Of course, the economy is going to be shit. But like, I think it was Steak who set up in Curacao, who they just pay the license to the government to set up a gambling thing there, and the government just lets them do whatever they want. So even though Steak is run by, I believe one of the founders is Australian, technically he's not running the business out of Australia. He's running it out of Curacao, who has no restrictions on it. So to me, it's just so shady. And another one is MyBookie. MyBookie has a website domain, which is .ag, which I was like, that's a weird one. Because you see, obviously, .com, .co.uk, .au, whatever, .ca. But .ag, I was like, what is AG? AG is Antigua, which, again, another Caribbean island where you just pay the money and you can set up your thing there. So it seems very sinister to me. It seems very shady. And, not to get too much into it, because my main point was I feel like it's kind of fucking ruining sports for me, where I can't even watch a fucking hockey game without FanDuel or fucking whatever being like, have you placed a bet on this? Did you know what would make the game more interesting? Putting money on this. And, it's just getting so out of control. And I don't understand how this is just okay with people. And there's a really great video, I believe it's by Wendover Productions, about how sports betting took over America. And one of the points he makes in that video is, for gambling to thrive, the more you want people to gamble, the more ease of access you give it to them, which I guess is true with anything. Obviously, if you have a liquor store at every corner in your small town, you're going to have more people drinking, right? Or if you have legal marijuana, people are going to probably smoke more, right? With gambling, they showed an example of, I believe it was Brisbane or Sydney, I can't remember right now, somewhere in Australia, or it might have been Melbourne, because I lived in Melbourne for a while, and one of the main things downtown is the Crown Casino. It's right downtown, super easy to access, and it's kind of one of those things where a lot of people are like, they're out for a night drinking, they're like, you know what, let's go gamble a bit. Let's go put some money down. And, there are, I don't want to shit on anyone who gambles. That's not the point of this, because there are people who gamble responsibly, for sure. They put what they're not afraid to lose. I remember, like, my first time ever gambling was on a hockey game where I bet against my own team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, who of course lost, and so I made like $150 or something from betting $50 because the odds were like that. In my head, I'm like, well, I'm losing $50. Who cares, you know? But if I win, okay, I make some money. So it's a bit, to me, it's just so, it's so insidious, and it's a weird thing where it's so easy to access now. Like, for example, in the city I'm from, Toronto, there are no real casinos downtown. You have like sport, like racetrack things. I believe it's called like Champions or something. There's like a bunch around the city, and those ones are really weird because I think that's only horse racing. I have no idea, but they look sketchy. Like they look like a fucking like laundromat. To go to the real casinos, you got to leave the city. You got to go to the suburbs, which prevents people from gambling and was done on purpose so that, you know, people don't ruin their fucking lives by going, you know, they can go downtown, gamble every night, right? And with sports betting, it's almost even worse because you can gamble from your home. You can wake up in the morning and on your commute to work, you can put down $100. You can put down $5,000 and lose it on your commute to work. That's a month's salary, you know, for some people. So it's really, I just think it's getting so out of control, and I hope things get better before they get worse, because it's just getting so bad, and they, you know, they run on very vulnerable people who have issues with impulse control and you know, whatever it may be. And I feel for those people who can't stop, who don't know how to regulate themselves, because it's so easy. Imagine if you were an alcoholic, right? Or whatever. You know, it's easy for, you know, when you first stop drinking, to avoid bars. I'm assuming, right? I don't know anyone who's my age who's an active alcoholic, or sorry, a recovering alcoholic. But it's easy to be like, let's not go to the bar. Let's go to a restaurant tonight, or let's stay in and have you know, watch a movie or something like that. Whereas gambling, it's like, okay, let's say you come home one night, you're bored, you can pull out your phone and just throw away some money. Why not? You know? And it's very, to me, it saddens me a lot. It saddens me a lot because it seems so easy to relapse. Like, for example, to get a bit personal here, I had a very close friend of mine who was a cocaine addict for many years. And he had a lot of, you know, relapses and blips, and he went to rehab and therapy. He's totally good now, completely sober now. But he told me it's hard, especially when you're putting yourself in a setting where you can get that so easily. So like, for example, if he was going out, I don't know, to a rave or a club or something like that, it was bound to be offered to you. You know, that's what he was telling me. He said, you know, you go to a bar sometimes, guys in the bathroom are like, yo, do you want some? And, you know, when you're drunk, you're not fully conscious. It's like, yeah, sure. Why not? Right. With gambling, to me, it seems like it's even easier access. You know, you don't have to go out to a bar and find someone who can, you know, invite you to some illegal gambling ring, or, you know, you don't have to order, you know, like you would something like drugs, right? Or you don't have to call someone or meet with someone on the street that's away from you or whatever. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of ruining things for me in terms of sports, and it's very upsetting to see because, you know, even I went to a Leafs Toronto Maple Leafs tailgate, which is like when they're in the playoffs, they you know, have a little outside area that's free. You can go to, you know, anyone can go, and you just go in and, you know, it's fun. They have like, they give away free t-shirts. They do, you know, whatever, and you can watch the game. And I heard people there being like, oh, I'm going to put money on this. Like, this is guaranteed to hit. This is, and you know, it's very unfortunate for a lot of these people because they're going to lose, right? The more you gamble, the more you lose, kind of thing, or the better your chances are of losing. And I look at, I watched a video recently about Vegas, and it was by Tyler Oliveira, and he interviews that guy. His name's Mickey something. and he's like banned from 11 or 10 or 11 casinos in Vegas, like all the big ones, because he's so good at gambling. And now he comes out and says, you're probably not going to win. It's not a good idea. And, he has a whole thing, helping out gambling addicts. So it's even like the best gambler in the world, or at least one of them, is being like, no, it's not a good idea unless you know what you're doing. Unless, even if you know what you're doing, you probably don't actually know, kind of thing. So it's a very unfortunate thing. And I think the only way we're going to see change is if, there's more advocacy for this. But these things, companies, these gambling companies have so much money, they can just lobby politicians and be like, yeah, don't restrict us or whatever, because we have all this money and you don't want to lose all this money, right? And it's a sad reality, but it's so corrupt, and especially in Canada. I can get into that in another episode, but the politicians don't work for the people, they work for the corporations, kind of thing. So if they want gambling to be legal, if they're being lobbied by gambling industries, then that's the way it is, and so be it, kind of thing. So and I think it was Friendly Jordies, who, if you don't know, does Australia. He's a journalist in Australia, and he's just incredible, the level of journalism this guy goes through. He's also quite funny, and he uncovered this huge link between organized crime and the gambling lobby in Australia, and how much money there was involved with it. And this is the type of guy who's had his house firebombed. Like, there's a video of him talking about his house being firebombed. So someone tried to kill him over this level of journalism. So I would trust what he says, and it's wild to me, like how much power and influence these things have. And so yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about today, because it just seems like it's getting so out of hand, and so it's ruining things for me. And I also want to say, like, I am no fucking saint, right? I am not the beacon of morality on this, like I've definitely gambled before. I've gambled more money than I should have in the past, and thankfully, I was able to get out at a time where it didn't really hurt me. But even experiencing that, it is sad, because you realize how someone would get addicted. You realize how somebody, let's say they come on an inheritance and they get more money than they've ever seen in their life from a family member. Well, all right, I have X amount of money in the bank account, I can gamble $100. And then $100, oh, you lose $100? Well, I got to make that back. Let me throw in 200 to make 100 back. Oh, I made my 100 back. Okay, let's put in a little bit more. See if we can come out in the green. And then all of a sudden, they're down thousands of dollars, and they feel like shit, and they don't know what to do. And so it's a very sad reality. It's a very sad reality for a lot of people. And so I will put some some links in the description here if you guys do need any addiction counseling, or there's a great YouTube video where this guy talks about it. I will link it in the description, where he talks about gambling addiction and how to overcome it if you guys struggle with that, because to me it seems like something that's not really being talked about. And gambling addiction is different than alcohol addiction, because gambling addiction will ruin your life basically to the point of no return. If you have $100,000 in your bank account, which is a lot of fucking money, by the way, if you have that in your bank account, you're probably doing well, in your savings, I mean, and you lose that money, that's not easy to make back. You're not gonna make all of that money back right away. So it's very insidious that even when some people get to the point where they lose all of their money, they're in credit card debt, and that's the point where it clicks for them. And they say, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? And at that point, it's almost too late. Whereas if you're an alcoholic, obviously, barring any physical damage you do to your liver or your, relationships with people, which you can also do with gambling, I believe there's a way you can come back from that. I believe there's a way you can also come back from gambling, but I think it's just like anything, you got to catch it before it turns into something that it isn't. And that's what concerns me a lot about it. So again, yeah, if you guys need any help with gambling addiction, I'll leave some resources in the description of this video. And yeah, just be smart with your money, instead of gambling